So Micah was a pretty easy pregnancy. I would say a very easy pregnancy for us. We were really excited about having our first child. And I know that we had been married a couple years before we decided to go ahead and start trying. And it was very easy. He was conceived within the first couple of months, probably about into the 30th week of pregnancy. We're doing a couple extra ultrasounds, and they were just doing some extra monitoring. So I remember around 35 weeks became a situation where it was semi-emergent, where they said, we want you to go see this high-risk doctor. So we were in this appointment and wasn't told anything except that there might be some water in his brain, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was the fear of maybe it's hydrocephalus or something like that. So I remember the OB telling us that, tonight is going to be the night that you're going to go to the hospital and you're going to have Micah by emergency C-section. So of course that was against our plans, our hopes. We wanted to have it as natural as we could. We went to the hospital after I called Matt and told him on the phone everything. And we just kind of hoped for the best at that point. And we went and had him via C-section.
I go in, I see Micah was delivered, and immediately I see him get delivered. And I'm like, oh, good. He looks perfect, right?
He's alive, he's breathing.
He's alive, he's breathing, he looks perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's when you they kept you in that room, and then I went with him and we went to get an MRI. For Micah. And I think that's where it really hit me that, whoa, I'm a dad of Micah, because, and I know you weren't there to see it, but to get the MRI for him, he's a new baby, and they had to strap him down to this little infant tray, basically. And you could just see through the screen, and there's this baby who you haven't even really had the chance to hold yet, is just screaming through this MRI. And I remember in that moment being I'm going to do everything I can to protect Micah and help Micah, because it was just immediately that just love was there, but it was also, you're scared. You're are they going to find anything?
So at that point, after we had already had all the testing, we had the doctors come into the hospital room with us. And I think at that point we had Micah with us. And they told us what the sonogram and the MRI told. And that was that Micah was missing the center connector in his brain, so the corpus callosum. Our first emotion was probably devastation, because we were new parents and we had all of these hopes and expectations. We did everything right. I remember him telling me that if we wanted to pray for something, to pray that his neurotransmitters would migrate.
Yeah.
Remember him saying that?
So immediately, you have this day-old baby that we're trying to project
the future
with, when, as a dad, you're thinking, what sports is this kiddo going to play? How am I going to, do these experiences with my first son, to immediately I don't even know if we'll be able to do those things.
I envisioned him going to college. I envisioned him, getting married.
You go through those waves where it's oh, he's perfectly fine. He looks perfectly fine. And then, you start to experience development and you're just not really sure. So from Micah struggling with not sleeping well, the constipation, just being upset all the time, not eating, I mean, we're worried about that, but I remember we were trying to look for answers, and we had gotten an appointment with the leading children's neurologist. I remember just sitting there with you, and Micah's kind of playing on the floor like he's in tummy time, kind of sitting up age. And I just remember asking him, what does the future hold? And I remember him telling you, don't expect much. With this kind of diagnosis, we don't see kids go really much past kindergarten. And I just remember being a dad in that moment. You were crying, and I remember saying, it's okay. This neurologist, he literally kind of interrupts, and I think, he was trying to be nice about it, right. But it was but it's not okay. Right. He it's not okay. It's you guys have to be ready for a life difficulty, special needs, that just hit us so hard. Like that just, and I remember you even saying, well, then what do we do? Like, what do we do? Like, where do we go? Like any parent, right? Like we're like
what therapies
okay,
can we do?
And I love that about you, because you were just so like, okay, you gave me the bad news, and then a second later you're like, well, what do we do to fix it? Like, what do we do to help with it?
Right.
And what he said then, I think, is what was really that motivation for us both, is he says, you know what, honestly, you can go a lot of different ways. He says, but they're just going to be a waste. He said, save your money and go to Disneyland.
And at that point, that's when, you know, we kind of figured out that we wanted to get him in different types of therapies. We did, you know, like just the traditional PT/OT. It was therapies all week, you know, like 3 to 6 sessions. And we have hope that he's going to continue to improve and, you know, surpass the stuff that doctor said. And you know what? He's 13 and we already went to Disneyland.
Yeah, we went to Disneyland for a totally different reason.
Yeah.
And with Micah, we went to all these therapies because he was struggling with movement and he was behind in all his milestones. And we were worried, is he going to walk? And the biggest thing that came up, I know for you, just wasn't eating really well, getting ear infections all the time.
Yeah.
And that's where we were like, okay, like diagnosis aside and future aside, like we've got to help our baby. There's an old chiropractor back in our town that you saw back when you were a teenager. You should take Micah there. I talked with him and he thinks he can help. And you know, we had no idea about pediatric chiropractic, that it was something that could help kiddos with these things. And you were just like telling me, and I was like, is it really worth it for you to go? And you're like, absolutely. Have you seen Micah? Like he's sleeping through the night. He's, the ear infections
It was
are gone.
a very fast fix for him. It really was with the ear infections. They went away. We went to talking about tubes with the doctors because he was struggling, trying multiple different types of antibiotics. Like that's so not good for his gut.
And it was, and that was really the point where I was like, whoa, there's really something to this, this pediatric chiropractic thing. And so as a family, we all started to get adjusted with Micah. You know, both of us and him, we basically went and we made chiropractic a part of our life because we saw really the benefit that it gave, that, you know, to Micah, not only for the ear infections and the digestion, immune system.
They really were like hardly ever sick. And our kids still to this day are hardly ever sick. It 100% replaced like modern medicine for us. Micah was 3 years old when we moved back to Algonquin to be with my family. That was our purpose in moving back. My first thing that I wanted to do was find a pediatric chiropractor out there. So I posted about it and I had a friend of mine from college recommend Dr. Tony. We started to see some really amazing things happen for him. We knew how important it was for him to learn how to crawl. That was one of the really cool developmental milestones that we were able to achieve through his care there. And
speech too, right?
And speech. He was so chatty, not real words, but tons and tons of vocalizations and, you know, able to say mama and just listening to his voice and hearing what it sounded like.
But when we first met Dr. Tony, it was like, whoa, this is someone that's talking about the brain, talking about the nervous system, which we didn't know anything about at that point, and talking about just pediatrics and the hope that pediatric chiropractic can get from kids. And so we were hooked.
He gave a lot of hope.
He gave a lot of hope. And it was that big contrast that we had seen from the doctors, you know, the neurologists, the people who told us the doom and gloom, that are like, no, like here's where Micah can go. And it was just such a breath of fresh air to receive that care that it literally got us to the point where as a family, we're like, okay, if Dr. Tony's doing this with his life, why can't we join him? And that's where when we both made the decision, your decision on this was harder than mine, for me to go back to school and go to chiropractic school to be a pediatric chiropractor, because at the time we had 2 kids and this meant sacrificing our home, our income. When we graduated to chiropractic school, the opportunity came up where, just dream come true, we got to work with Dr. Tony. And, you know, that's when Micah was 6 years old and he was still going through a lot of development, but we started on the team here in Crystal Lake with Dr. Tony. And I started my career as a pediatric chiropractor, and it was just so amazing. And I know you always say it, you're like, you would have been fine if I just adjusted our family for the next 7 years. But to join that and now be able to see the other kids just like Micah that we can help is amazing. But I know Micah over the past 6 years has had just so much progress.
Yeah. While we were in chiropractic school, he had just started to use a walker. So he also has, orthotics. So he was practicing taking steps. I remember this day super, super clearly. He was playing out on the deck and you were mowing the lawn. And I was just holding his hand, walking along the deck. And I just thought, I'm just going to really just gently let my hand go. And I let my hand go, and he took some steps on his own, and he was very nervous. So he stopped immediately. But then we just kept practicing, and just, I cannot tell you how good it felt to watch your kid after you've been waiting for, let's envision a normal kid walks at 1, to wait 7 years for your kid to walk. And just the joy that I felt as a parent and that I know Matt felt, and to see the joy in his eyes, because I know that he was super proud of himself.
Now we're seeing Micah and he's going to the bathroom on the potty, which is so massive. He's still in diapers a little bit, but like for us, like that is so massive for him to have that freedom and that comfort now.
With as long as it takes for him to make major milestones, like it wouldn't surprise me if he took another 5 or 10 years to say some simple sentences, but I believe he can get there.
If, we would have listened to what the doctor, the neurologist said back when, Micah was 6 months, if we just said, this is probably as far as he was going to go, I don't think we would have been at this point hopeful. I think we would have been at this point just trying to make it through.
Yeah.
And it's so cool now to be on the other side of that, to be for Micah, what's next? What's next developmentally? What's next that he's going to accomplish? Micah changed our life. Like, I'm a chiropractor because of Micah. You're a wonderful mom to 4 boys now because of Micah, because of how far Micah's been able to come, that, now he can be our easy child. We oftentimes say, and he's the easy kid because he's calm, he's comfortable. He's in that good place. Over 80% of special needs parents end up in divorce or separated families and struggle because the life of their child is just so tough. And we have had those days, those weeks, those months, those years. But the fact that we have a community that has helped us through and have each other and have Micah just, and that hope, it has helped us so much to make it through those hard times when, we didn't think we could go on. And then to have more kids and a bigger family and be able, like you said, to visit Disneyland again for Micah's Make-A-Wish trip, that was totally just a God moment to go full circle, to be like, yeah, we will visit Disneyland.
Yeah, and we did all that stuff too.
And we did all that stuff too. We did all that development too. So it was really cool. My journey with pediatric chiropractic was a little bit different. I started as a dad first, and being a dad to Micah, who's now 13 and has special needs, and it's a little bit more difficult for him and he's working through things. It gives me this perspective of what parents go through when they meet me for the first time. I remember when I was there, when Micah was younger, of not knowing where he would go, not really knowing the answers. And, that really gives me a huge heart for the parents that are coming to me and looking for answers. Because I remember being that dad that didn't have them, that didn't even know where to look. The one thing I love to talk to parents about is exactly what I learned. It's that the nervous system, the brain, and the body can help you. If those are working together, they can help you with all the above. And that's what I love sharing with parents, is that when we look at that, that's really what got Micah back on track. And that's what I love to share with parents, because that can get your child back on track too. Not just for one of the things, but for everything, and to put the puzzle pieces together. And that made me so grateful to be hearing from other parents, because I learned that with Micah and it changed our lives.
I'm Crystal Hill.
And I'm Dr. Matt Hill.
And we will make it through the storm.